Welcome everyone to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Tim.
Thanks for having me.
You used that in Vampire Month, I'm sure, at some point.
Hey, werewolves have fangs too.
I mean, they do, but it's not as relevant to them. This is a horror movie podcast. We get together, we talk about a movie we've watched, and somehow we didn't ever do American Werewolf in London. So it's Werewolf Month. We're here, so we're going to talk about it. It's time. It's time. This was going to be the finale of Werewolf Month, but we're going to overtime. We've got one more werewolf movie for you next week. So look forward to
American Werewolves in Paris.
It's definitely not that, although we're going to have to do that at some point, especially now that we've done the first one. But
I'm calling it right now. That has to be Patreon.
Is that bonus level?
Patreon ass level, yeah.
Okay. Is it regular Patreon level, or is it going to be like a new $100 tier? You want access to American Werewolf in Paris? You're gonna have to make it worth our while.
I mean, we'll keep it regular for now, but honestly, I think it would be worth like $100 level. Oh boy, that movie.
Yes, regular bonus episodes for the record are just $1 per month on patreon.com/mailfuzztv.
Can't beat that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's fantastic value, quite frankly. But yeah, so I mean, probably one of the most famous modern werewolf movies ever. And it's, modern. It may sound a bit silly now that it's 40 years old, but it's modern in the sense that it's the modern era. It's not Wolfman. It's not classic Universal. It's it's a more modern Universal movie. It's the story of a couple of American tourists. One gets killed. The other is infected as a werewolf, and the movie's about him, building up to him turning, and that's basically it. I mean, I don't really have a whole lot more in depth to say about the actual plot.
Yeah.
We'll get into it in spoilers, which we'll get to, of course, after warning you. We're in spoiler-free territory right now. But that's the just obviously we'd both seen this before, probably a few times at least, if not more.
Oh yeah.
So, what is your general opinion on American Werewolf in London?
Oh, I mean, I absolutely love this movie. I think it's phenomenal. It's, geez, where to begin? I mean, I really can't think of like much that's like wrong with the movie. I think it's, I mean, I guess the big thing, people talk about is like the special effects, like the transformation scene, like you said, it's like almost 40 years old, but it still looks absolutely phenomenal. The special effects are so good. It's a very simple story, but I think it really works. It's actually very funny. I like the mythology it builds. Because I like some of like the little touches, like the like seeing the ghosts of the victims you killed. I think is like a really cool idea. I think the main character is very likable. Him like along with I guess like you'd say like his love interest, the nurse, also very likable. And I don't know, it's just so good. It's one of those like movies that you just put on, and I don't know, it really captivates me. I don't know, I'm a big fan of this movie, I guess.
I could tell. Very passionate, very enthusiastic. I like the movie a lot. I don't know if I have quite the same levels of unmitigated passion that Tim is displaying here. Is it because he sees pee-pee? Is that why you like it so much? He sees pee-pee?
Of course.
Yeah. Okay. Just checking.
The rest I can do without.
Yes.
And that's what I meant by special effects. I mean, the special effects were great in this movie.
Yes, of course. I mean, it's much like a lot of werewolf movies. It's about your main character being bit, and then either the slow transformation / the build to the full moon where the transformation is going to happen. And in contrast to Ginger Snaps, which was last week, where is this sort of slow transformation where the taste of blood, the thirst for violence and the kill and so on, that's all sort of coming in slowly over the course of this. Here it's a little bit different in that it's more that he starts sort of like, you know, like you said, seeing dead people that have been related to the werewolf deaths before, and sort of like all warning signs that are maybe a bit more vague, where he doesn't necessarily believe it completely that he's going to turn into a werewolf. So the actual transformation is a bit more like, no, once the night of the full moon hits, it's like, okay, things just, you know, changed completely. It wasn't so. So the time it spends building up to that is very much about character building. It's about making you care about him. It wants to give you this sort of, you know, light-hearted in places. There's definitely some comedy sprinkled into the film. Although I wouldn't call it a comedy by any means, but there's definitely
no
funny stuff in there. But I want you to like him. I want you to like Jenny Agutter's character, Alex the nurse, is very good in this film. She been in a bunch of stuff around this time period. Logan's Run, of course. She went on to be the mum in Child's Play 2, and much more recently than that, she was in Avengers and Winter Soldier. So,
what was she?
Yeah. So, you know, but yeah, I mean, I think the werewolf transformation is very good. The actual full finish werewolf, I think, is a little bit shakier, but the transformation stuff is quite good. Again, the actual, and I said this about Ginger Snaps last week, but the visceral nature of the werewolf kills, particularly the one, you know, of his friend, which is not a spoiler because that's kind of the start of the movie. It's the setup is that he survives when his friend doesn't. And you have a lot of culture shock stuff. You have, because obviously, I mean, it's in the title of the movie. He's an American in London or other parts of the UK, and the characterization of some of these people was kind of cracking me up in some ways. We'll talk about that as we go through it, but some people are very. I'll say this: I don't think I've ever considered a doctor and nurse relationship to be quite as drill sergeant orientated as the hospital we get here as it's presented. But yeah, so I mean, yeah, the character is very likable. It builds up. It's a tragedy of a film because it's basically always building to one particular end, and there's like almost no other solution to it. Essentially,
I think it's in all honesty though, I think it is a pretty bold take on it, because I feel like other movies, I mean, I guess it's a little hard to talk about without spoilers, but I feel like a lot of movies would not go there. They would try to find some other resolution, but yeah, I like what it does.
Yeah, no, I do too. I think it's kind of funny actually watching it again. You kind of forget how it breaks down structurally, because I for some reason I always remember it getting to a certain point much quicker. But the first full transformation is over an hour out of the movie. Like, it's just quite late on. I don't think I remember that when I think about it back in my head. It surprised me.
I would say like in general, most of the werewolf stuff is kind of, you know, saved towards the end, and I feel like, you know, it might be a complaint in other movies, but here I think the character is like so well done, and you know, adding that like wrinkle with the, you know, like the ghosts of the victims and everything, like gives you like some extra horror elements where it doesn't feel like you're constantly looking at your watch waiting for the werewolf to, you know, to happen. And you know, like even stuff like, you know, there's like some dream sequences and stuff, which is, you know, something we complain about in a lot of movies, but I actually think it does like work here. And you know, it's you know, it does a good job of like giving you other stuff while you're waiting for kind of like, you know, the meat of the movie.
Do you want to know why the dream sequence in this isn't a problem? I can tell you. It's pretty simple. Is that the dream sequence in this isn't doing the same thing as the rest of the movie. When I get mad in a shit movie, let's take The Boy, for example, where it'll do like creepy supernatural things and then she'll wake up and none of it really happened. But the creepy supernatural stuff that was happening in the dreams is still kind of like what's typically going on in the movie anyway. So it's just a really weird fake out. In this movie, the dream sequence involves a dead character sort of walking around as a zombie, stabbing someone. So it never feels cheap when he wakes up, because like, of course that was a dream. That's nothing like what any of the rest of the movie is. It's so distinct and like otherworldly, and I mean, it represents something. It is important because the whole movie, once he's been bit and he's been warned by the ghost essentially that he's going to turn into a werewolf and hurt people, is that, you know, it's the fear of him leading to the deaths of people around him, in particular this one that he cares about. So it has meaning. There's relevance is the word I'm looking for, and it has you know. So basically, the point I'm making here is the boy is shit, right? What's your next point?
Well, no. Well, no, I mean, I agree. Like, not a lot of movies can pull that off well. Like, the boy in this are like two good examples of that are able to utilize that.
How dare you?
But no, yeah, it's like it's funny because if you think about it, like it's in a way, I think it is kind of tough to talk about because it's not like there's a lot of intricate things to happen. You know, there's kind of like a few major things, especially like, you know, horror wise, that you kind of want to harp on. But it's not like the movie feels shortchanged or anything. It's like there is a lot of like depth and everything there. And again, it's, you know, it's like a lot of character stuff and whatnot, but it's never boring or anything. Like, you know, even the non-horror stuff I feel like is entertaining. And again, it's, you know, because it's directed well, it has, you know, good characters, good performances. Yeah, and I really like it. And yeah, like you mentioned too, you know, just the setting and everything. I like, you know, seeing the, you know, like you don't see like a lot of like 80s horror movies, you know, like taking place, you know, in London. And I like, you know, even before, like when they're just kind of traveling the countryside and, you know, going through the moors and the what's the name of the bar? Is it the Slaughtered Lamb that they're
Slaughtered Lamb?
Yeah, like I like all like the, you know, the bar people there, and it's like a very yeah, it's a different kind of like a British person.
You know, I actually
see later on
I just noticed in the cast list that Rick Mayall was one of the actors in there, and I never recognized him because he's obviously much younger than I'm used to seeing him. You won't know who that is, but people who are fans of Bottom, or possibly the Young Ones.
Oh, okay. I know the Young Ones.
You know, Young Ones.
I haven't watched a lot of it, but yeah, I know of it.
Yeah, he's actually younger in the Young Ones than he is here. But I mean, in the Young Ones, he's dressed like a
punk.
Like a punk, yeah. So it wasn't as obvious. What in fact, one of the other actors is the chess player, sort of main one, who's really angry sounding in the pub. He like, it was really bugging me, like, what else I know him from, because I definitely know his voice and his face from something. He's actually in Alien 3 of all things, but
okay.
But again, he's very distinct the way he speaks in that movie, and it's very, you know, he's got a very distinct angry voice. So yeah, which he does use in this quite a bit as well. No, the setting's interesting. This, because obviously it doesn't start off in London. It starts out in this, you know, middle of nowhere, in the north of England. Where they're hitchhiking and doing whatever before they get bit. And once it does move to London, I think what's interesting watching it, obviously, I mean, I've literally been in London once my entire life, but, you know, UK is the UK, so it's funny seeing some of the things that were still kind of true in 1981 that are today, but then other things that are completely different. Like, I had no idea porn theaters were a thing in, like, London. that I've never seen one of these in my life.
For some reason, I always feel like that there is a weird connection between porn theaters and werewolf movies, just because of this movie and The Howling.
Yeah, The Howling, yeah.
Like, two of the most, like, you know, notable werewolf movies for some reason have like scenes in a porno theater.
Very odd. Actually, the porn movie you see, and this is not spoiler stuff because it's just the porn movie that's on, but the porn movie that's on is oddly kind of funny. Like, because you see like a little bit of it, and it's like, so this woman and guy obviously are getting down, and this other guy walks in and goes, how dare you, you promised me you would never do this. And the guy who was having sex with the woman goes, I never promised you no such thing. He's like, not you, you idiot. And then he looks at the woman, and the woman's like, what, I've never met you before in my life. And the guy who barged in, who's topless by the way, he's got this big mustache, just goes, oh, sorry then, and just walks out. What? What was that? Did David Lynch direct this porno? What?
It, you know, it feels like a very surprising joke. I feel like for the time period, but it also does feel like a very British joke. Like, I can see that kind of like weird, absurdist British humor. Like I mean, maybe not in the 80s. I don't know. I haven't seen as much like 80s British stuff, but like I could definitely see like a British joke like that.
Yeah, I wonder. I wonder what sort of consult, because John Landis wrote and directed this, and I wonder, is he like, did he ever live in the UK, or did he have like a consultant for like a lot of this
Good
British
question,
stuff,
yeah.
just to like, you know, get a lot, because there was a lot of little things that kind of stuck out to me, like when at one point David, the main character, is watching some TV, and there's like, you know, talk of the News of the World, which is a British newspaper, and this stuff like that. Or even actually, the thing that really stuck out to me is that one of the channels is off air, and this actually brought some flashbacks for me, because the image that used to be on like a broadcast channel when it was off air, although why it was off air in the middle of the day when he was watching, I don't know, but it's like this image of like a girl with like a that was a blackboard, like a canvas for painting, but she's sort of sitting there, and then around it is the grey kind of like test pattern stuff, but this image of this girl in the middle was still being used as the broadcast is done for the day, as late as probably around 2000, because I remember seeing this as a kid. So that was there for a long time. I don't know why it was this image, but it was.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Like you know, I mean, I'm no expert obviously, but like yeah, I have watched like, you know, a pretty decent amount of like you know, British TV shows, and you know, I've read plenty of like you know, comic books from like British writers and stuff. So like I don't know, I feel like I mean if you want to correct me, or if people want to you know, correct us about anything, but like I don't know, it feels pretty authentic to me. It doesn't really feel like an American just being like, what do British people say? Oi, where's the Queen? You know, like it's not just like a bunch of stuff like that, you know?
I mean, something is, and this may just be a time period thing rather than it's incorrect, but I did feel like the only thing that I felt was overdone is that every time they were talking about TV, they said telly every single time. And it felt a little bit overdone to me, where I'm like, yeah, telly's said. I mean, I don't really say it, but it is said. But it felt like every single time someone said TV, they said telly instead. And that stuck out to me a little bit. But I don't know if that's just because, yeah, in 1981, everyone would have said that. And no one would have even said TV or whatever, you know? They may have said, you know, "Can you watch it on the box?" Because that was like something people used to say. Doesn't really work anymore. I think flat screen's kind of killed that nickname.
Yeah, that's true.
Not really a box anymore. But no, I think for the most part the setting doesn't feel forced or like it's doing weird things. The only stuff that comes off as weird is weird for other reasons. Like, you know, everyone in the pub acting so strange that there's outsiders there. That's got nothing to do with it being England. That's just to do with it. Oh, they're the weird town who knows about the werewolf, so they're acting cagey. So, you know, whatever. But yeah, everything in the city for the most part. Yeah, you know, it's nice to know that the underground logo is not changed in like 40 years. So that's nice. So I mean, yeah, that stuff's good. Soundtrack's very notable, and every song in the soundtrack has the word moon in it. A little bit of trivia for you.
And it fits the movie really well. Like I don't know if, you know, like I don't know. I guess I don't want to go as far to say as this is like that kind of ironic music you know, casting that we kind of get in like movies nowadays that like really irks me. But I think it actually like fits really well in here, and it doesn't feel like, you know, too like, I don't know, winky to the camera, I guess. Like, I don't know, maybe it helps that I don't know, I like the songs. I think they're actually good, but I don't know, I think it flows with the movie pretty good.
Yeah, no, for the most part, yeah, there's a couple of good songs in there that stick out to me the most. So I don't know if there's much more to say without spoilers. So I guess I'll just say thank you to our Patreon producers at the time of recording. Obviously, the Christmas tree kind of gives it away that we're recording this in advance. Tim's going on paternity leave, but the Patreon producers at the time of recording are as follows: Tyler Hess, Cindy Palacios, David Sharp, Bordnow, Al Tribesman, Christopher Moy, Brett Williams, and David Brown. Thank you to you all. They are Patreon producers. meaning there are $20 or more at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, but you can of course support us for as little as $1 per month, and that helps us show it a lot. It helps everything we do at MailFuzz TV a lot. You get bonus episodes. They're on pause just now with the paternity leave, but they'll be back soon, and you get the access to the back catalogue though. There's new bonus Ace episodes coming out and all sorts. You still get early access to new episodes that are coming out every week at the $5 tier, so go and have a look and see if you want to help support us and get some bonus goodies for your troubles. And of course you can also support us for free by doing simple little things like hitting the like button, rating the podcast on iTunes 5 stars, and that sort of thing. So thank you very much, and enjoy the show. I put myself in a corner, okay? I put myself in the corner with the tone of voice and the way the sentence was ending. I had to say something else. What do you want from me? All right.
It's all good.
So, full spoilers then for An American Werewolf in London. So, yeah, I mean, I think the things I want to talk about at the start is when they get to the pub, because they're hitchhiking, they're in like a sheep truck, and they end up walking to this pub, and it's cold, and they come in, and everyone immediately stops, and they all stare at them, and like it's like they let them come in, and they sit down, and they want some something hot to drink or eat, and there's nothing in there, but she'll make them tea. That's the one thing she's got that's not booze. But they tried.
I think it's kind of funny, just the back and forth of being like, do you have this? Like, we don't got that. Like, how about this? Like, we don't got that. Like, what do you have that's warm? It's like, we got tea. It's like, all right, or we have like tea or whatever. He's like, all right, do you have that? And it's like, we don't got that, but I can make you some. I was like, that's funny.
Yeah. So everyone's very like quiet and weird, and at least to this guy telling this story about Americans, there's this joke about remembering the Alamo, and it all comes off really weird, like to the point where when they even ask about the symbol on the wall, which is clearly like a symbol to like protect the pub from werewolves, from context, like the dart player misses the dartboard, and he turns very seriously and goes, "I've never missed that board before." But really? In your entire life playing darts, you've never missed the... Come on.
Maybe it's a new board they just put in.
Okay, alright, sure.
It's only been there for a few days.
Very possibly. But I mean, I think so the pub stuff comes off to me as a little bit cliched at first, but what I do like about it is once they leave and it cuts back to the pub, and they're kind of like saying, because I think the barmaid's saying, "Oh, you can't just let them go out there like that. Come on, like we can't just let them walk out there. We know what's going to happen to them," and them all basically denying that they hear anything, because they hear like the wolf howling, and everyone's like, "I didn't hear anything." Nah, me neither. And then they hear it again. It's like, "No, don't hear anything." So there is kind of this this guilt quality to it, where I like this kind of debate that they're internally having with themselves to whether or not to get involved and try and help. And I think the guilt is something that plays into the movie as a theme, because when Jack gets bit and the wolf sort of jumps out and starts mauling him, and he's screaming for his life, and just all these quick cuts of him screaming and the rustling in the blood, is that David immediately just runs away and leaves him there to die. And he does eventually. He gets like so far and goes, "No, I can't leave Jack," and he turns back round. And at this point, I'm like, "What's the point? He's long gone. Pointless." But I think that guilt. I think part of the seeing the dead body, it's not just about the warnings that he's given him. I think there's also a bit of guilt in there with that. But he does get attacked. All the people from the bar shot with shotguns though, and like shoot the wolf. I do like that you see like the human, like, because when he just before he passes out, like David looks over and he sees like a human being with a bullet hole, wound on the side. I think that's very important. It does contradict something later on in the film though, if you take it as fact, the thing that's brought up later. Which is that you have to be in love with the werewolf to kill it. Oh yeah. And like, so which one of these farmers was in love with this dude? I'm just curious.
That's a good point.
I mean, to be fair, I think I'll take the you have to be in love with the werewolf to kill it. I'll take that more of just a metaphor rather than a literal thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, is that a completely new myth? Or I'm trying to think. Like, I don't know.
Oh,
Was that part of the lore of like the original Wolfman?
well, they bring
Or...
up Wolfman actually, because when David's trying to explain it to Alex, he brings up the Wolfman and talks about Lon Chaney and all that. It's been too long, and we've not done the Wolfman yet. I'm sure we'll refresh our minds at some point, but I don't remember. It's been too long.
Nor do I. It's I mean, I hate to say it, like, I do appreciate the look of it and everything, but I was never big on that Universal Wolfman.
I know.
Out of all of them, especially like, compared to Dracula and Frankenstein, Invisible Man, Creature, like, it's not my favorite.
It's weak sauce. That said, though, compared to the 2010 one, it looks like a goddamn masterpiece. Benicio del Toro versus Anthony Hopkins in a werewolf duel.
I recently rewatched that, and I wouldn't say the movie is good, but there was one scene that I do think is quite good in that movie, when he's like attacking all like the professors or doctors or whatever in that like classroom.
I mean, I'll be honest, I saw it in theaters. I do not remember what you're talking about at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's one scene in the movie. Like the rest, unfortunately, ends up being just a little bit too dull and boring. But I'll give it credit though. I like that one part.
What cracked me up? So he wakes up in hospital, right? David wakes up in hospital, and we're introduced to Jenny Agutter's character Alex, who's kind of just a nurse taking care of him. There's a second nurse, and they kind of banter a little bit. The other nurse is a bit of a perv because she checked out his dick for no reason other than she wanted to check out his dick, which, like, all right, bit problematic, but whatever. So yeah, the doctor comes in and is very drill sergeant in the way he talks to the nurses, which kind of stuck out to me. The whole thing with her falling for him, though, Alex, that is it actually bizarrely felt like it was. I felt like it feels a bit quick to me, right? In the context of thinking about it, but I will say that thinking about a film that's completely unrelated to this from a few years later, a little known picture you might have heard of called Back to the Future. Doc explains in that movie that the reason why Lorraine falls for Marty the way she does when he goes back in time is I can't remember what he calls it, but there's this condition, this thing that nurses sometimes get where they fall in love with their patients.
Yeah, isn't that like Florence Nightingale syndrome or something like that?
That might be right. I can't remember, but for some reason, as I was thinking this thought that she was falling for him a bit quick, I thought of that speech from Back to the Future. I went, oh, okay, all right, you know what? I get it. She sees him as like this, sympathetic dude who needs help, and she needs to take care of him and whatnot.
I think there's definitely that, and then I think the real easy explanation is, I mean, they're both just like really good looking, like
I mean, okay,
like really
sure.
good looking people want to hook up with each other. So
and you're saying this from experience?
Maybe.
But yeah, basically he keeps freaking out, thinking he's seen his dead friend, who tells him he has to die because he's going to kill people if he doesn't. He has some nightmares.
Real quick, one thing though. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure they're probably around the same age, but for some reason, I always get the feeling that like Alex is like definitely is a good bit older than him. I don't know if it's just because like British people just sound more adult, unlike American men. But I don't know, she always seemed a bit older. Not to say that like, yeah, she's not. Like she's still very attractive and a very likable, charming person. So it still makes sense that he would.
I can give you the accurate.
Her,
I can give you the accurate figures for the actress here.
Hit me up.
She is 1 year younger than he is.
Wow, I would not have guessed that.
he was 30 when this came out. She was 29.
Okay, see, I don't know. Maybe it's. I also maybe like I first saw this when I was younger, so just anyone who's that age just seems a lot older or whatever. But I don't know. She always rang as a bit older than me. Nothing wrong with that. Just something.
How dare you insult Jenny Agutter and her prime?
I love her. She's great.
No,
still great.
We have to address one of the weird. Well, that's not so much a subplot per se, but it's kind of a subset of characters who we see a few times, which is the police inspector and his partner, which is played almost entirely for comedy, where the partner actually is sympathetic and tries to like understand what David's saying about a possible animal and not a lunatic. Because the story is that it was a lunatic, which makes some sense. They literally have a body of a naked guy that's been shot. So I mean, you get why they would think that, but no one seems to address the fact that he has like giant claw marks that clearly, look like an animal did it. But whatever. But yeah, there's a lot of comedy here where the inspector's like dropping bedpans and like picking them up, or he's like asking, because he's offered tea and he's like, oh yeah, I'll take some tea, and then the main inspector's like, no, we're fine, and so like he keeps shooting them down. There's this kind of it doesn't go too far. It's not super slapstick or anything like that, but it's definitely it stuck out to me watching it this time because I'm like, yeah, these characters are purely for comedy. There's almost nothing else from these characters but this comedy of their misshapen partnership.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. Which I would kind of, put that over on like most of the comedy in the movie is there's definitely comedic parts and bits and everything, but nothing ever feels like too over the line or too over the top where it's like, all right, like what are we doing? We're full-blown comedy now. It's like it all feels like I don't know, like very believable to me, or I don't know, or at least like, all right, that's funny enough that you can kind of give it a pass. But yeah, like it never feels too over the top, or at least I think so.
So Alex feels so sympathetic to David that he's lost his friend and is having nightmares, but he's about to be discharged. He has nowhere to stay in London, and she offers to put him up at her place. Very risky move, I think, but given she barely knows him. But although before I move on, actually, there's also a really amusing scene where she's like taking care of this kid in the hospital, and the kid just keeps saying no to everything she says. And I think I laughed in this scene because another kid comes up and just like hits her in the side with like a book or something like that and runs away. And I'm like, oh man, you're not paid enough. You're just not paid enough. But she takes him back, and again, it's the things that make these characters likable is little things like this, where she's taking him around the apartment and just being like, hey, this is the living room, this is the kitchen, and every time they walk into him, he's like, delightful, charming. He just like there's some chemistry there. Admittedly, I'm not really sure why when things get kind of intimate for a moment, she immediately just sort of blurts out, I've had 7 lovers in my life. 3 of them were one night stands. And I'm like, why are you telling him this right now? I mean, even if you're thinking this is about to get sexy and you're about to have an intimate relationship with this guy, I don't know if now's the time to just blurt out the exact history of your romantic endeavors.
Yeah, I just assumed that was standard English protocol.
Oh, no, did you? Okay, you think that's it's like, okay, sex is about to happen. Now's the time to blurt out the numbers.
Yeah, it's a very proper way of like, oh, just to let you know, here's where you'll be going in this timeline.
You're number 8. Accept that. But yeah, they have sex in the shower, on the bed, blah blah blah. They've kind of bonded. She goes to work the next day. Oh yeah, does have another nightmare that night though. He talks to Jack again, the dead friend, who I do like is getting more like undead looking every time we see him.
Yeah, he's like decaying.
Yeah, it's a nice touch.
And I forget if it was this time or like the first time, but I like when he's like talking about his funeral. He's like, oh, like, hey, you never guess like who showed up and stuff. Like,
yeah. He's talking about the girl he likes and how she ended up. She was so upset that she ended up sleeping with this other douchebag that he hates, and even in death he's mocked. And there's stuff like that was like, it's just little character beats that make the characters likable. And I think, especially watching it when it's not the first time, you know how it's going to end. Like all this stuff with Jack telling him that he has to like die to stop the curse, to stop this. It does have this horrible tragedy sort of sense to the whole movie, where inevitably he's going to turn into a werewolf, and he is a good person. He doesn't want to be a killer, so the ending is kind of always going to be what it is. This is not like Ginger Snaps where there is a potential cure, and so on. Worth mentioning, this movie also does not have the silver bullet stuff. There's none of that. It's just any type of like typical death will do. But we are operating under full moon rules. Although full moon is at least spread out over 2 nights. Is it? Here's a question: is there technically, like, when we talk about the full moon, is there only one night of the month that's technically a full moon, or is there actually a period of a few days that we can count as a full moon?
So whenever like I go outside at night, I always like looking up at like the night sky, and I got a pretty good view at my place. Like you can actually see some stars and stuff, and I always look up at the moon, and I always think like well, I mean, obviously not all the time, because sometimes it's half moon or quarter moon or whatever, but there's a lot of times where I look up like, oh, that's like a full moon, but then I wonder like,
but does it count? But does it count?
Yeah.
Like if it's slightly before or after the full moon, does it count as a full moon?
Yeah, like you can tell it's like, all right, yeah, I'm not sure if this is a full moon or if this is like the night before where it's like getting ready. Like, I don't know. To me, like I always feel like close enough. Like if I was a werewolf, I would look up and be like, yeah, it seems about right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I suppose that leads to a question of like, what's the important part then? The technicality of it being a true full moon, or just that it's big enough that it's enough moonlight to trigger the transformation? Like, what is the actual? Because one is more of a science thing where it's just enough moonlight to trigger it. The other one, and that one's obviously more variable because it just has to be enough. Or is it more of like a curse thing where it's like, no, it has to be specifically the night of the peak full moon? Because if it's that, then it's a bit weird that it turns into a wolf 2 nights in a row.
Right, yeah. That's a good question. I don't know.
So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know either.
What happens when a cloud passes by?
I think it's okay. I think as long as he's triggered, it's fine. After that's whatever.
It triggers like a specifically timed response that. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, once he's triggered, he's a wolf for 10 hours or whatever, and that's it.
Makes sense.
He'll turn back. It's fine. But she goes to work the next day, leaves him alone, and he's just kind of bored. He gets locked out. He has to climb back in. He tries to read. He tries to. Oh, I noticed when he picked up a book and tried to read, he was right at the end of the book. So I don't know if that was like he's been reading this book, and because it feels weird that he's that bored by the book that he gives up like 5 pages from the end. If you've got that far, you want to knock it off.
Through.
Yeah, you want to see it to the end. But
maybe it was like a maybe the last couple of pages were like an appendix or something. There's like, I don't need to read this.
Yeah, because
afterward,
one of the physical things that does point towards his transformation sort of early is the fact that he's never hungry. It's like the idea that regular food's not appealing to him. It doesn't make him sick or anything like that. Because I've seen that in other werewolf stories where regular food will make them vomit or make be unappealing.
See that with vampires a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he can't eat though, because there's a cute scene. I mean, again, to make them likable, there's a scene where Alex kind of forces him to eat, almost like he's a kid, by feeding them. No, she doesn't quite do the airplane, but it's essentially what that type of feeding.
Yeah.
But the chemistry. But anyway, but it all builds up to transformation, and the transformation is it's the most famous scene in the movie, for a pretty good reason. I imagine it was very jaw-dropping at the time when it came out,
and it still is. I mean, no matter how many times I see it, when it pops up, like you're just fixated on the screen in awe. It looks incredible.
It's that famous shot of like the hand stretching in front of him as he's looking at it. That's the moment that really kind of works. It's those moments where it can change in the shot, because there's definitely stuff where it just cuts between shots and he's a bit hairier now. He's a bit hairier now. But it's that moment where you can actually see the hand stretching out that those moments are really impressive, and it really gives it enough life.
Yeah, and I mean, I should probably. I'm sure there's some special feature that talks about how they did it. I should probably check it out. But like, I mean, at no point does it ever really look like, okay, they just replaced his hand with a dummy hand that they're stretching out, or okay, that's like a mannequin's face that is now elongating and that kind of thing. Like, it always feels like, I mean, maybe so. I don't know. This might be one of the, the best example of like, I don't know, just looking at something and feeling like, I don't know. I feel like this person's transforming. I feel like we're not, yeah, watching like a model or a mannequin or something changing.
Do you know what we need? Do you know that moment in Avengers where Hulk's like, "That's my secret. I'm always angry," and he like transforms in one shot? We need that. We need the werewolf version of that, where
That would be cool. Yeah,
it's just this quick slow motion in shot transformation, and obviously that means it's CG. But if it's good CG,
if it's good, yeah,
yeah, we need that moment. We need the.
I'd love to see that.
That's my secret. I'm always hungry. Rawr.
That's my secret. There's always a full moon.
Okay. But he transforms, and we basically get like a series of scenes of him killing different people. And for the most part, like it keeps him off camera. It's a lot of POVs, a lot of you know, there's like a couple who are like meeting like some friends for a dinner party, who get attacked outside. My favorite one out of this bunch here though is the guy in the subway. I think it's the most memorable one. All the POV stuff of going down the subway tunnels and chasing him. I think it's really atmospheric, and I think it's one of those things where the horror stuff on the first like 15 minutes when they first get bit and attacked and whatnot is good. But then it's like, you could argue that, you know, the movie for a lot of it after that is about building the character relationships. It's almost like you could be forgiven up until the transformation, that maybe it kind of forgets that it's a horror movie a little bit. So it's nice that the actual deaths that come afterwards are actually quite suspenseful. It's not skimping on the atmosphere for those, which I appreciate. So and he kills some homeless people as well. The other ones. And it's during this, I think, actually, where we see the doctor, who is basically suspicious enough about the sequence of events that he goes to the pub to ask some questions. And would you believe it, they're not very friendly to him either.
Yeah.
Very standoffish. But the darts player is feeling guilty and tries to tell him about the werewolf outside the pub. And then the angry one comes out, he's like, "That'll be enough of that now! Stop that!" I can't even begin to do his voice justice. He's got a very specific voice, that angry dude.
Yeah.
But
it's I mean, you kind of mentioned it before, like it's a little tropey or cliched. I kind of have, you know, the bar where, you know, everyone's like aware of the dangers, but that, you know, it's all spoken about in like hushed tones and everything. But I don't know, I really like it though. I think it like works really well, and I like how it feels very ominous, and just that horror of like everyone knows this is real, but like, you know, you just don't talk about it. Like, you don't even want to acknowledge it. I don't know. I like that a lot.
I also get the impression that like everyone in this very small village comes and hides in the pub for maybe like the 2 or 3 nights of the month where there's a full moon. Like they come here and they, you know, they wait it out, and that's why it was so busy that night. So because they just know that, you know, because they know that that's the dangerous time in the month. Yeah, so it's because a lot of stuff with the doctor trying to contact Alex when he gets back and saying, "Where is he? We have to bring him in." Blah 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 blah. He wakes up in a zoo, and this is mostly comedy stuff, and it is pretty funny. But I have to admit that like the comedy like almost gets uncomfortable, and not in a bad way. There's never anything sketchy actually about it, but when he's butt-ass naked and he's hiding in a bush and he's saying to a little boy, "Hey, you little boy, I'm a balloon thief. Come over here and I'll give you £1." And the kid's actually quite smart, because when he says like, "Wait, if you're a thief, why are you trying to give me £1?"
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think all this stuff is like, yeah, very funny. And yeah, like I love the kid's reaction, and yeah, just like, yeah, telling his mom like, "A naked American man stole my balloons." She's like, "What?" It's great.
Yeah, he ends up stealing some woman's coat to cover himself up, but
also I don't know. Do you get the impression that like when he was a werewolf, like he snuck into the zoo to like have sex with a wolf or something?
I can't say I did. I think it was more just that he felt comfortable there, more of a natural habitat, perhaps. I don't know.
That's my headcanon.
That's your headcanon. He does say that he feels great though. That's one of the things, is that after he's like fed as a werewolf, he feels much better the next day, and he's all excited. Alex is taking him to the hospital. He's very frisky. He's trying to initiate sex like every step of the way. Until he hears about the murders. The taxi drivers is like, it's worse than the what's it?
Jack the Ripper.
It's Jack the Ripper, but he says it in a very particular way. I was trying to remember the exact phrasing, but yeah, worse than Demon
something of Whitechapel.
Yeah, Whitechapel or Fleet Street. Yeah.
Yeah.
But he runs out and he ends up trying to get himself arrested so that he won't hurt anyone else.
I thought this was funny too.
By insulting the royal family.
Yeah.
Does he call it? He calls the Queen a man. He says a homophobic slur about.
Yeah, it's a little problematic
Charles.
stuff, but it's like.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess maybe it gets a little bit of a pass because you're like, all right, well, it's of the time, and then also he doesn't really believe this stuff. He's just trying to get arrested. Yeah. So, but yeah.
Yeah. And
and I like that, like
the policeman's not having it. He's just like, enough of this nonsense. Then I'm not entertaining this. Get away.
Yeah. It's like, well, what do you want me to arrest you or something? He's like, yes, that's what I want, please. As if he was really serious, like he probably could have punched him or something, and
but he could have done. What's funny is he yells something about Winston Churchill, and the funny thing is that Winston Churchill was a raging racist, so he's not actually considered that great a person, even though he did help, do a lot of important things when he was, in a position of power. But he wasn't necessarily
like highly revered.
Yes, but he's not like, he wasn't a great person. So it's just really funny. But I kind of believe that maybe that stuff wasn't as known or talked about at the time. But
also, and you could, if you want to, you could give it the benefit of a doubt by saying like, well, he's an American, he doesn't know.
Oh sure, yeah,
the British politics behind it.
But he runs away from her. She goes to the hospital. She basically just sits out the movie until they hear about the wolf rampaging in Piccadilly Circus. But he ends up in the porn theater because he sees the dead Jack walk in, and then he's confronted by the ghosts of everyone that he killed the previous night. And even this has got a dark sense of humor, because at one point when they're all suggesting ways to kill himself,
I love this. Yeah,
it's the woman from the couple who just really cheerily goes, "You could shoot yourself in the head. A gun would be good." She's so enthusiastic about the way she says it. The idea, because this is the other idea, is that they're all in limbo until he ends the werewolf curse by dying. So, but yeah, he goes on a rampage. We mentioned the porn movie that's playing before, but he starts killing people in the theater. Policemen come in, and again, darkly funny when he starts rampaging outside and the traffic all starts crashing and stuff. Someone gets their head ran over with the wheel of a car.
Jeez.
It's really brutal. Then someone else gets pinned between two cars. It's like proper chaos. And I kind of laughed at the end though, because Jenny Agutter shows up as Alex, runs towards him and says that she loves him. He hesitates, and then the firing squad all shoot him down, and that's basically the end of the movie. Very, very dark, sort of bittersweet. Not even bittersweet. It's just bitter. It's a very bitter ending. Yeah.
It's very sad, and I do think though that I feel like a lot of other American movies would try to have some type of resolution where he does find a cure, or the power of love saves him or something, because he spent so much time with this character, and you get to like him very much that having him just gunned down in the middle of the street at the end is obviously he was a beast that he's killing people, so it needed to happen, but it's still very sad.
Yeah, all I could think at the end was 'twas beauty that killed the beast.
Yes.
In a way, so just a reference to King Kong there a little bit. But no, I mean, his biggest strength is making us care about the characters, and making us care about the fact that he's destined to die, and he has to die, and the only thing that he can do that's good for everyone else is to die. So, he's on borrowed time, and he gets, a happy few days before he goes, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's this sad story, and because I realized there's a scene where he calls his parents. In fact, one of the nightmare scenes that we didn't talk about, The one that ends with the sort of fake out where he wakes up and then, or you think he's woken up and he sees Alex get stabbed. But the nightmare that happens before that is that he's actually at home with his family in the US, and these like wolf Nazis show up and kill his entire family. Thoughts on this scene? It's very, very different from the rest of the movie.
Yeah, it's very strange, but again, it works. And I think, like you brought up a good point before, like it's, you know, it's not doing something that the rest of the movie is doing, so it's like
it's obvious. Yeah, it's obvious that it's not like even pretending to be real, and again, it's that idea that he's going to kill everyone around him if he goes back home. Because one of the scenes that happens before he goes into the porn theater is that he actually phones home. He phones, and I think it's his little sister that picks up, who's like 10, and he tries to ask like, oh, where's mom, where's dad, where's everyone, and no one's there, and he's just trying to like leave a message saying tell mom and dad that I love them, kind of thing. And it's just kind of sad because you kind of get the feeling that he kind of knows that he's feeling homesick. He wants to be with his family, but the safest thing for them is for him to not be there. And there's a sadness to the movie, which again it works because you like him well enough, and because you like Alex as well to a degree. And it's a very solid movie in what it's doing, and it's I don't think I have quite the passion for it that you do, but I think it's a really solid werewolf movie, and close to the top end of what a werewolf movie can be.
Without a doubt, yeah.
I mean, I like Ginger Snaps a bit more. I think Ginger Snaps has an even more distinct sort of focus on its characters and how interesting those characters are. And it maybe feels like it has a bit more to say than this movie does, perhaps. But this movie is a really, really solid kind of prototype for what a lot of werewolf movies would be after, including the terrible sequel, which I barely remember, but I'm sure we'll get to it at some point.
Oh boy.
Everyone's favorite.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think like this is just the absolute like gold standard. I just I mean, from start to finish, I really admire it. And like, yeah, I mean, I agree. It's like the story is pretty straightforward. It's not like, it doesn't have like some deep hidden meaning or anything, but I think that's perfectly fine when there's, so much like skill and talent involved, and everything around it just feels like it's really firing on all cylinders. And like, the characters are great, performances are great. And again, like the special effects, like, yeah, I mean, I agree that the transformation sequence is better than once you see the actual werewolf at the end. But I think I still like the werewolf in the end as well. And yeah, but I mean, that transformation sequence really can't be understated. It is like so good.
It's notable that he dies in an alleyway at the end, which means that Jenny Agutter has to become Batman. That's just the rules.
Oh, of course, yeah.
That's just the rules. That's how it works.
For sure.
Yeah.
So I guess like she would then fight a war on cops because the cops are the ones that gunned him down.
I guess. I mean, I think if I'm trying to read into like some themes and whatever, like the idea that he's scared of like killing his family and people he cares about, and the guilt of the people that he has killed beforehand, it almost, and
guilt's a big one, yeah.
Even the werewolf itself is is kind of a disease. It does kind of feel like someone who has a contagious disease and is separated from everyone and feels doomed. So maybe you could sort of relate this movie to being about terminal illness in a weird way.
Sure.
A contagious terminal illness that he has to sort of, ultimately not sacrifice himself, but yeah. Which makes it which is a very sad story. It's a very sad story. Anyway, what are you going to rate An American Werewolf in London?
I mean, this might be a little surprising to you, but I'm gonna give it a 10 out of 10. I think I mean, honestly, I don't think there's anything that doesn't work for me in this movie. And I do think like you're talking about werewolves. I think this is like the top of the heap, the gold standard for werewolf movies. And I mean, again, I like the characters, I like the performances, I like the music, the special effects. At no point do I ever feel bored watching the movie. I think it sometimes I can be like a harsh judge of comedy, and like I hate when they try to like mix too much comedy in a movie. But I think all the comedic stuff in this really works. Like I think there's very memorable bits and lines, and like I love the setting. I love the slaughtered lamb. Like I can't think of anything I don't like about it. The only thing I don't like is that I don't like the director, but I mean we don't really want to go into that. But I mean, even that aside, though, I think the movie on itself is just absolutely great. Can't really fault it with anything. So 10 out of 10 for me.
I don't really have any like big reasons why I'm rating it a fair bit lower than you. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. I think it's very, very good. I think it's entertaining, likable characters, interesting, mix of cultures because you have this American character in London. All that stuff works quite well, I think, and you get the sense of tragedy. But clearly, it just doesn't get the same reaction out of me as it does you.
That's fair. I mean, everyone has like their different things that they like and stuff, and especially if you're not like I'm also a big fan of werewolves, even though I do agree that it's not like there's a ton of great examples of werewolf movies, but like I am still a fan of the creature. So like if you're not really big on that, then maybe it might not hit as hard.
I mean, I have nothing against werewolves, but I definitely don't like them as much as like vampires and zombies. I definitely prefer over werewolves, but I mean that's that's just a taste thing more than anything else, I think, at this point. But we do have one more werewolf movie.
It's no Teen Wolf, is what you're saying.
Oh, sharp. We do have one more werewolf movie, even though it is technically going to be spilling into May, because we do actually have a more recent film that we decided to add on kind of last minute. So that's coming next time. But if you made it this far into the review, put the phrase slaughtered lamb into the comments to let us know you got to the end. Tim, you're going to pose for the thumbnails, so I'm going to count it down. 3, 2, 1, pause. Is that supposed to be the dead friend, or?
I don't know what it is.
Okay. All right.
Just a face. Take it or leave it.
Okay. I'll leave it. Honestly. I'll happily leave it. So yeah. So honestly, I'm looking at the IMDb user reviews, and there's basically nothing to mention because it's a movie that everyone loves and talks about and is rating highly. No hot takes. It's all just great. This is this and this is that and whatever. There's nothing entertaining here. So hey, this segment works better when the movie's trash. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Right. So there you go. That is American Werewolf in London. You can, of course, I'll just remind you to like and subscribe and get us on patreon.com/MailFuzzTV to show your support. And you can, of course, catch us on the Twitters at Screams Midnight. So get there for updates, but also just random shenanigans from myself and Tim. Tim often tries to push his Brahms agenda or his leprechaun agenda.
I have 2 agendas.
Yeah. He'd probably push Hellboy as well, just it's not as horror related, so he doesn't...
Depending on the mood, yeah.
Yeah, depending on the mood. But that is American Werewolf in London. So one more Wolf movie. So getting to overtime with one more week of werewolf stuff, and we'll see you for that next time. So thank you very much once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching scary movies, and we'll see you next time.